My name is Jasmine, and I am a recovering drug addict.
My name is Richie Farrell, aka the Old White Junkie.
And we are your hosts for Exit Team Nashua.
Our mission is to bring recovery into the living room.
Last year, over 72,000 Americans died of an accidental overdose.
That's almost 200 Americans every single day.
We will bring you guests with real-life experiences with addiction and recovery. Welcome to Exit Team Nashua. Hi, welcome to Exit Team Nashua. My name is Jasmine, and I'm your host. I'm a recovering drug addict, and Exit Team is a show where we take people who have, real-life experiences with addiction, substance use disorders, trauma, whatever it may be, and we take their experiences and we bring it into your living room so they can share their experience, strength, and hope with you. So if you're just watching us for the first time, welcome. If you have been watching us, thank you, and we're happy you're here with us again tonight. So the shows go pretty quickly, so I want to let you guys know if anyone wants to reach out to us, you can always find us on YouTube. Just search Exit Team, and you'll find any of our shows, and you can get a hold of us that way. Or you can also look us up on Facebook. The name of our Facebook page is I Am a Heroin Addict. We're working on getting that changed, but currently it's I Am a Heroin Addict. You can send us messages, post anything on our page. You need any resources, we're here for you. You just need someone to talk to. You're going through something, you're struggling. That's how you contact us, and if we can't be there to be a resource for you, we will put in the time and effort to find a resource for you. So if you watched last week, I know I told you guys that I had fired Bobby.
I put in the paperwork and I actually filed for unlawful termination. It's really cool if you show up with a team of lawyers, and as long as they're wearing good suits and a couple gold chains underneath the button downs, you know they're good. So I'm back. So
Bobby has forced his way back on the show. So
forced, coerced. Muscled, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Semantics.
So I'm really excited for tonight's show, because a majority of the guests are people that I have, life experiences with. And in 2015, I was really struggling with getting sober. And tonight's guest was someone that was, really there for me and helped me and guided me a lot. And when I relapsed, God speaks through other people. And people here in Nashua were trying to get me to treatment and to help me. And this woman just came in and God just spoke through her. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Lauren. Hi, Lauren.
Hey.
So this is really exciting. Lauren, tell us what qualifies you to be on our show.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on, Jasmine. I've been in recovery for a couple of years now, and just what qualifies me is my experience with getting sober. I've been through multiple treatment centers, and, I'm the real deal alcoholic drug addict that, is the living example of today that absolutely recovery works. And I think that is what is important for us to talk about is people can get well. And that my experience has proven to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so you said you've been to like multiple treatment centers, and I think that tends to be a common theme. I know I didn't get sober until my 9th treatment center, but so with struggling, yeah, and you too, with struggling so often and being in and out of treatment centers, what do you think finally worked this time that you were able and you are still currently able to maintain long-term sobriety?
Yeah, I think for me it's a multitude of things. Throughout multiple attempts of trying to really do this thing and get well, it took a real different approach for me. And the final time was complete abstinence in a 12-step program. And that absolutely changed my life to a completely different, a new world that I wasn't used to living. For me, for a long time, it looked like just getting urine screens or, just showing up to meetings or, just stopping using, and that was never sufficient enough because eventually I would always pick back up. And it took a really, really long time for me to realize that absolutely drugs and alcohol were never my problem. Sobriety issue, right? Yeah. And it took a long time for me to understand that. I couldn't really figure out why every time I used drugs and alcohol, I would feel completely fine. But people would tell me, like, this is happening, A, B, and C. You're having all these consequences of your addiction, but I felt internally great, And then when you take that substance away, that's when the real problem came out. And I think that that's why abstinence, it worked for me. I was able to remove all substances and then eventually get into a program of recovery where I was able to work the steps, and it's brought me to a place today of ultimate freedom. And I think that's huge, because that's what we all want. I mean, as addicts and alcoholics, we want freedom from this thing. We want to be able to have the 9-to-5 job and, live a normal life that is completely unattainable for us for a very, very long time. Some of us think we can never get there, but I was able to do that through this process.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. So I've seen you have, tremendous growth over the last couple of years, and you certainly have something that I want and that I aspire to be. But what did you come from, just so our viewers know? Because I'd like sit behind you, like I see a beautiful home, and I see you, and you're just so beautiful, and like you're so well put together, and just seeing you in front of me like lights up my heart. But like I know that wasn't you a couple years ago,
Yeah. So I think they talk a lot about the opiate crisis today, and it is not. It is not about status. It's not about where you come from for money. It's not about, homelessness or this person or that person. It completely affects everybody. And I came from a really good family, middle class, grew up in a small neighborhood, and, it quickly escalated after high school. And I got into when the OxyContin was really, really big. Mm-hmm. We had that pretty big boom in the early 2000s. And from there, it just completely spiraled into a real bad heroin addiction. And I come from good morals, guys. Like, this is something that I was taught, don't pick up, don't use drugs, don't hang out with these people. But I was absolutely, once I put that substance in my body, could not stop. And it brought me to a place of homelessness. I mean, my family had to hire a private investigator to find me, and I was just MIA, completely hostage to the addiction. And when people look at me today, they would have no idea that was even me.
And I feel like that's a really important thing to talk about, because I feel like for most people, the stigma's still there, right? And people don't want to talk about their loved one's addiction, right? Like, even in my own life, like, it's like, oh, we come from a good town, good neighborhood, they have good school systems, they have all this stuff. Like, we can't let the neighbors know that, like, Bobby or Lauren has a problem. Because then it destroys the reputation, when in all actuality, like, I bet you one neighbor's going to AA, I bet you the neighbor down the street's going to NA, I bet you another, down the road there's a meeting house, whatever it is, it's everywhere. It's just nobody talks about it, and they feel ashamed, and it like creates this stigma and this need for a dialogue, what we're having here. And then even that plays into it. You talked about, how many treatments did you go to?
Roughly, I've been through, between detox and treatment, probably 14, 15 times. Before I finally went out to Texas, I got sober out there, and my life changed. But I mean, this wasn't like a first thing, go to treatment for 30 days and I was fine. That was just not my experience at all.
Yeah. And that just plays into that whole thing you said in the beginning, right? That we want to let people know that recovery is possible, right? Because I went to, if you include sober houses, 30 days, and detox is like probably around 5. Yeah. Right, until I got sober. And that what plays into the whole, like, oh, rehabs don't work, detoxes don't work, recovery is not real. You know what I mean? It plays into that whole idea of, like, I remember growing up, I always thought, like, if I'm ever a heroin addict, I'm done. Like, there's no coming back, there's no living a normal life, there's no getting better. It's like, basically, like, I'm gonna be homeless and die. That was the image that was portrayed. That was the narrative I was told. I wasn't told that there are ways to get better. I wasn't told that you can do this to get there. And, like, the idea of us talking about this right now is huge for that, I think.
Yeah, agreed. I think that heroin addiction today is just, I mean, it's not, it has to be discussed, because it's realistic. It affects everybody. I mean, I work and live in this field every single day. And there's not one person that I meet that is not affected by some type of alcoholism or addiction. I mean, it has to be discussed that people can get well.
It is everywhere. And so I talked about this last show, so I don't want to like stay on it too much. But a couple weeks ago, I came home from work and I found 2 kids overdosed outside my house. and it was very scary. And they were able to be revived, and one of them was Narcan, and thank God that I had Narcan. And then just 2 days ago, we found another individual overdosed in a parking lot, and like these are real life things that are happening. You know, I mean, I don't think that people every day, everywhere find someone overdosed. I don't even know how I was in that circumstance twice, you know, in such a short period of time. But these things are happening, so there needs to be awareness around it.
Definitely, and it's weird that, like, are you shocked by that statement, Lauren?
No, I'm not.
Neither am I. Like, that's not shocking to me, and that says something about the state of
it was
this
scary
crisis.
for me. It
Oh,
was
completely.
so scary to be in that situation, to be like 2 years sober and to find 2 kids overdosed. I didn't know what to do. Like, I was not, you would think, like, being a trained professional that I'd be like equipped to handle that, and I wasn't. I was panicking. I was like freaking out.
It's different.
So it's really cool where your life's at today, and it's also it's very inspiring because at 2 years sober, there's this really cool thing happening in my life where, like, I'm getting awareness and realizing that, like, I'm worth it. You know, and so I see you doing all these really cool things, and for me it's so inspiring because, like, my truth is that I can do them too. And so it's really cool. So you struggled from substance use disorder for a very long time, and in and out of treatment. Your family had to hire a private detective. That's crazy.
That's impressive, I'm not going to lie.
And so 12 steps, you know, and so you're doing some pretty cool things today. What's life look like today?
Yeah, so life is totally different today than it was, oh my God, 10 years ago. So, yeah, I went out to Texas in 2013. My sobriety date is March 13th, 2015. And since then, I mean, my life has just completely changed. What I really like to talk about in my story when I tell people, you know, what I've gone through is since I've gotten sober, anything has been possible. So a huge part of my story is when I went to school, you know, the college that I was going to kicked me out, essentially. They kicked me out due to my addiction and, you know, some consequences from that. And I was able to return to that same school, you know, once I came home and was able to, like, make a living amends to them. A school that I essentially robbed took me back. I was able to be on the dean's list through that college, graduate with my bachelor's. I now work in the field that I love, you know, helping people, and working in a health and human service field is just, it's great. It's great to be able to help people all day and do what you love. And, you know, I've gotten married. I have a daughter who's a year and a half. I'm pregnant with my second daughter. I've built a house. It's just,
You have 2 dogs that I adore.
2 dogs, yes.
Yeah.
So I'm really close to my family now. It's just, life is really good. I mean, that's not to say that I haven't had a tough year, because this year has been really, really hard for me. I lost my job unexpectedly in January, and I totally switched career paths from working directly in treatment to now I work in the judicial system, which has been a great change, and I love it. But it's been, I mean, guys, everybody has struggles. And I think that that's important to talk about too, because not everything is great every single day. Just because we're in recovery does not mean that everything just falls into place. That's not realistic. But I've been able to follow my passion and keep moving forward. As you know, Jasmine in July opened a women's sober house here in Vermont, which has been extremely successful, which, I mean, I took a plunge, guys. You know, it's something that I always wanted to do. And when I lost my job and went through that really tough time, I said, if there's ever a time that I need to be of service, it's now.
Yeah.
So I walked through the fear and I opened a women's house here in Burlington, and it's been great. So I've just continued to move forward, and, you know, God's really put a lot of blessings in my life, and I keep doing the work, and everything shows up in its place. You know, it's great.
That's so crazy. So you have your own house. You have you have a baby. You have a baby on the way. You have dogs to take care of. You have a husband. You have a job, and you have a women's sober house. Out of all things, a women's sober house, like,
Which is hugely needed.
Hugely needed, and I have had the pleasure and opportunity of running women's sober houses, and they require a lot of work and effort.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's been really, I am very busy, but I wouldn't do it any other way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you were talking, and I meant to interrupt right there when you were talking. We were talking about, like, all the damage that you put your family through.
Yeah.
But I So because I do know you like a little bit, and I, you know, I've had the pleasure of meeting your mom, through all the struggles that you've put your family through, I think your mom has found a purpose in helping others too. You know, I know your mom's pretty active in helping other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So my family member, they're all of my family is really big on that. I guess we're just like a family of givers.
Yeah.
We always
Yeah.
that. So my mom's been really big in her own recovery as well, but also essentially to the Women's Sober House. She does a cooking class every month that she really loves to do, to like her way of giving back to people. And that's almost, if not equally as important as the addict that's trying to get well, because, you know, I talk to that comes into my house, and, you know, I always say the same thing, and that's that the families, they need a break from us.
Yeah.
They do, and they need some serious help to get well themselves, and they deserve that time and separation from us to be able to get their lives back. I mean, set hostage for a very long time, and my mom's been really good about just, you know, showing up for volunteer opportunities and being very supportive. I couldn't have opened the house without my parents, you know, support in doing that, and they've just been great. But I mean, it took a long time to get to that point. There was a really long time they wouldn't give me the alarm code to their house and wouldn't let me come home, and it was tough. It was tough for a really long time, but it takes a very long time to earn that trust back too. It does not come back overnight.
Yeah, I remember I was at a meeting somewhere with you. I was meeting you at a meeting, and I had a friend that like needed to get to treatment, and your mom just like immediately dived in, and I was like, I didn't even like know what to do, because I had never like helped anyone to treatment before, and your mom was like, all right, so we got this treatment center here, we got this treatment, and the girl had like no money. I think she might have even been homeless, and your mom was like, nope, I'm working on a scholarship right now, and I was like, who is this lady? This is so
That's awesome.
And she knew like all the steps to take it to get this lady help, and I think she ended up getting her down to Cape Cod or somewhere like that, or she was supposed to go. I'm not sure if she actually went or not. It was a couple years ago, but I just remember like your mom being so enthused to want to help this girl, and your mom was like, nope, Lauren's put me through the ringer. I know how to do this all. And how cool, like now that like I've cleared up a little bit, like how cool, like, you know, it's amazing, because something that can be looked at as being a bad thing, like everything you put your family through, like now you have so much purpose, but like your mom is able to help so many people. I just remember that one interaction so vividly with her, and she was so passionate and so, you know, all about it, and now she gets to show up at your sober house and help all those women and help other people's families recover. Families, I find, if anyone's watching this in your families, don't take offense, but I find sometimes the families are so much harder to work with than the person who actually suffers from the disorder.
Well, yeah, and honestly, I mean, that's our own fault, because we be like that. We have trained them to act in a sense of fear and all of that. I mean, they were not like that usually until we picked up this addiction, right? So that's why it's so important for families to get well, so we can end the stigma and they can help other families to get their loved one into treatment. And that's that trickle down effect that pays it forward to get people well. Because it's really ultimately the families who call each other and say, you know, my son is struggling, my daughter's struggling, where can they go, what can they do? It's very easy for us as recovered people to be able to talk to each other about our recoveries, but for families, it's a lot more difficult. So if we can break that barrier with them, get them some help, it in turn does help a lot more people than we think.
And I feel like that's huge. I feel like not a lot of people talk about it, because it's mainly focused on how do we solve the opioid epidemic? How do we solve it? How do we solve it? And everybody forgets that, you know, one person has it, their entire family is affected by it. Like my entire family was affected by my addiction. You know, it wasn't immediate family, it was the entire family. And like, that's a lot of healing that has to go on. And I feel like not enough people talk about it. And like what your mom did, that's amazing that she's able to help people now because of this. You know, and that's something that we need to continue to talk about, continue that dialogue, because like this is how change is gonna happen.
Yeah, and for the you know, the individual suffering, you know, alcoholic substance use disorder, there are so many resources available for us. We just might not know where to turn, you know, but there are so many resources available to us. And just because like I'm seasoned in the recovery scene, like I know where to help people, families looking for help, but you don't actually hear about a lot of support groups for families. that are
Right.
that are going through the struggles.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we need a lot more of them. I mean, there's a few around Vermont that I know that I like, and I think that it takes a lot. Some families don't want to go to Al-Anon. Some families only want to go see a therapist. Some families don't want to go at all. So I think it's about finding the right approach, just like it is for finding the right approach for someone in recovery. Some people do not like AA and they only want to go to NA, or it's everybody needs to find what works for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have grown so much around that. Because I have seen people get well many different pathways.
Yep.
I have, and so when I first got sober, I was very ignorant towards that, and I shamed a lot of people for what they did and didn't do. And as I'm growing as an individual, I'm getting more awareness that it's actually more like about love and connection and spiritual principles and whatever one does to get that way. Who am I to say? I just know what works for me, and I trust that the universe will guide someone to me if they need what I needed.
Yeah,
and it's just we don't have a monopoly on this thing.
Right.
I know plenty of people that have gotten into recovery and sustained recovery through a bunch of different means, and that's amazing. I would never shame anybody for changing their life. And that's something that we need to talk about too, I feel.
Yeah. Lauren, have you ever heard of dislocation theory?
Yes.
I love the dislocation theory. I love reading all that stuff because for me it just rings so true because it just to be disconnected from self, from the spirit, from family, from everything. So once I started learning about dislocation theory, I started viewing like addiction as something completely different. And even when I first got sober, even though I know firmly now that drugs and alcohol were not the problem, it still took my awareness like a little bit of time to start realizing that there's something going on internally here. Like there's something going on, for me, I'll call it the spirit. There's something going on with the spirit here. And when I heard of dislocation theory, I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And so for someone like me, a 12-step program works great for that because it connects me with self. It connects me with a power greater than myself. It's connecting me with other people. I'm learning how to form these connections with, with the earth, with everything around me, having connections with my material possessions too. You know what I mean? I have relationships with them. And so, 12 steps taught me how to do all of that, but none of it started clicking for me until I had heard of dislocation theory. I love Johann Hari. I know that dislocation theory stems from Bruce Alexander, but I love Johann Hari.
I've never heard of
Oh my God, I have so many books. I will get you some.
All right.
You've never heard of dislocation theory?
Nope.
How are you on the show with me and have never heard of dislocation theory?
No idea.
That's so great. We're going to do a whole segment on it.
Are we?
It's great.
Okay, do we get slideshows?
So I fan mailed Bruce Alexander. I did, and I asked him to come on the show, and he never responded.
It's a blow to the ego.
Yeah, I know. I did it like a year ago, maybe even a little under a year ago. I did it right when we started the show. I fan mailed him and asked him to come on. I'm gonna try it again.
Proud of you.
Try again.
Yeah, I will. And you know what is really cool is that is a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
That is a possibility. I would have never believed that before, but I do now. So the show goes by so quickly. We're starting to get down there in time. So yeah, we got a couple minutes left. I feel like this has been a really, really, really good show, and I feel like we covered so many things. So what I always like to ask people, so there are two questions I like to ask, but the first one is, if someone's watching the show and their loved one is like really struggling either with alcoholism or, heroin addiction, some kind of addiction, what would you tell the family?
I think it's, I tell families the same, every family I usually tell the same thing, and it's always to just walk through the fear and reach out to someone, because everybody knows somebody that is affected by this disease. So if it's somebody that that works in treatment or at the police station or a friend of a family that has a daughter that is an alcoholic, reach out to somebody, because we want to help you. People want to help. That's all. They want to help. I can't that.
I swear to God, call Lauren. Call her.
Hey, that's fine.
I called her. I turned out okay. I called her.
You got into treatment, So it's just about reaching out and finding that connectedness, finding somebody to talk to help you through it, because families cannot do this alone. They just can't. They don't have the resources. They don't have the professional experience. They're, very much too much emotionally attached to the person. It's just, it's
Absolutely.
impossible. You cannot do this yourself. And people are out there to help you. Reach out and we can get you guys, some help. So if somebody is out there and your family is struggling with this, someone, just please call. Call a helpline, call 211, whatever your state's local, helpline is. Somebody will pick up, I promise you that, and we can help.
Yeah, fine. So a lot of people will message me like, hey, I don't have insurance, but I want help, and so I always just guide them to the local recovery center, or, something like that, because I know the recovery centers in New Hampshire are equipped to help those people with that, and help them get insurance, and then help them get to a treatment center, because New Hampshire now has insurance that covers treatment, so. That's good. I always, whatever I can to give, I can't, I personally don't own a treatment center, so I can't give people beds in treatment center, but I do what I can to help them and get them there. So we got 2 minutes left. So in 1 minute, what would you say to someone, to an addict or alcoholic watching that's suffering? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would just tell them to absolutely not give up. And don't think that your life cannot change. Because anything is possible. If I can get sober, anybody can get sober. Okay, no matter how many times you've tried or gone to treatment or prison or, been sectioned or whatever it looks like, you absolutely can get well. And I think that is important for people to hear, because we've fallen under the delusion that this is absolutely what my life is going to look like.
Yeah.
And I'm destined to die this way. And that is just the farthest thing from the truth. Everybody deserves sobriety. Everyone. So don't think that you are too far off to get that, because it's possible. Anyone can get well. Anybody.
You're living proof of that. You are a powerful example. You really are. No, you are. So we don't have enough time to tell the story, but I essentially wanted to die. I was trying to die.
Whoa.
I was,
Yeah.
and people were trying to help me, and I was like, no, and I don't know, I just allowed Lauren to help me. And so I'm really grateful for that, and I've followed you over the years, and I just see everything you're doing, and just your spirit too. You have such a strong spirit. I remember the first time I ever met you, it was at a meeting, and I don't know what you were saying. I wasn't even listening to the words at all, but just who you were and how you radiated. I was like, I want that. I knew that I wanted that, and the coolest thing is I really, honestly, I'm turning into that, and it's a really cool thing. So we're out of time.
Yep.
This has been a great show. I love you dearly. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. So anyone watching, if you're struggling, reach out. Look us up on YouTube. Look us up on Facebook. Lauren's available. She can help you. Bobby, myself, anyone from the Exit team. Thank you guys for watching.
no, wait.
Hi, welcome to Exit Team Nashua. My name is Jasmine, and I am your host. If you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. If you've been Hi, welcome to Exit Team Nashua. My name is Jasmine, and I am your host. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. If you've been watching us every week, we're happy to be back here with you. The Exit Team takes people who have real-life sufferings with addiction, alcoholism, trauma, and we bring them right into your living room so they can share their experience of that and how they made it through, resources that they utilized. So we're joined here by Bobby this week.
How's everybody doing today?
Yeah.
And we're joined by this very special guest, one of the greatest humans I've ever met.
Oh,
Like, literally the light of my life.
thank you.
We need to put out a disclaimer right now.
Yeah.
Buckle up for this show.
Oh, we're going to get weird. It's going to be fun.
It is. Well, you know, it's only weird if we make it weird, really. So.
As long as the
So-
socks stay on, it's good.
Before we get into it, guys, because we get carried away rather quickly, and I like that and I encourage that. I just want to let everyone know if you're watching this and you're suffering in any way, so we don't have a direct dial right now. So you can look us up on YouTube. You can look up Exit Team, or you can look us up on Facebook. Our Facebook page is called I'm a Heroin Addict. Just search us and you can send us a message if you need any resources, if you're looking for any help, if you need someone to talk to. We're more than happy to get you connected. So let's take it away.
All right.
Yeah, the stage is yours.
You want me to just
I
let
feel
it
like
roll?
we didn't even... Jason? Or Snook? We're just going to call
Whatever.
him.
Yeah, whatever
I
you
can't call
guys
you
want.
Jason. I
That's-
can't.
I
I'm
hear
sorry.
that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not Jason to me. That actually just feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Very unorganic. Yeah. I call myself Snook at the particular meetings I attend for my recovery, so I'm a person in long-term recovery, and what that means for me is I haven't had a drink or a drug since 10/6/2016. That's not when my recovery journey started, of course. I was first introduced to recovery in 2011.
Okay.
And I can get into that further if you would like, but I'm sure you would probably want to start berating me with questions at this point.
No, Snook just actually really wants to be berated.
Yeah, I do. I
mean,
do.
he keeps
Give it to
throwing
me,
that
yeah.
word out there, and I believe he's trying to invite that.
You know what? Different strokes for different folks. Whatever you like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's
Yeah,
all you.
Of course I know what
I
you
don't
mean.
judge. I don't judge.
Sure.
So how about we talk about the things leading up to your first time in recovery, right? Because, you know, what were the warning signs? What were the feelings going into it? You know, what convinced you that, yeah, you needed help?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, so for my whole life, I had found drugs and alcohol to be my solution. I know Lauren earlier was just talking about something very similar. I had found my cure to life, to living, and when people started telling me that I might not be able to use that anymore, it was threatening to me because I didn't look at it as a drug and alcohol problem. I looked at it as an abstinence problem. I had an abstinence problem, right? When I didn't use, I would absolutely go loopy.
Yeah.
Right?
Seems like a common theme.
So,
It's not like I tried to like make
are
somebody
you
crash a car.
Are you trying to say
Abstinent.
that you're not currently loopy?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a
fun
little
kind.
I'm a little crazy.
Fun guy.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But my internal condition would be riddled with fear, right? I would be just so uncomfortable with self, and I wouldn't even be able to come and talk to anybody, right? Like my condition was just way off, and now I get to be a goofy kind of weird, and I'm still a little crazy, but completely comfortable with myself without putting something into my body. Right?
See, and that's anybody that's ever met you knows, right? Like I could go anywhere in New England, literally.
Yeah.
Like my girl up in Portland, Kate, loves you. Everybody
Sure.
loves you up there.
Sure.
You know, you go down to Mass, everybody knows you. If I say your name, people are like, dude, that guy is the greatest.
Yeah.
Bobby asked who was coming on the show today, and I was like, Snook, and he was like, oh my God, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm there, I'm in. He was
Yeah,
like so
right.
excited about
And
it.
so that is one of the great gifts of being in recovery, right? Like I am now so comfortable with being in my own skin. However, when I was first introduced to recovery, I mean, I was, you know, like, what do I do with my hands, right? I mean, I was so uncomfortable, you know,
Sometimes you do the double handshake. You know, you handshake once and then you don't know what to do and you're just like,
yeah,
I don't know
just
how
a
human
lot of head
I've
nodding.
never done that.
Really? Okay, I'm the weird one.
Have you done a double handshake?
I would call people by the wrong names. I would be nodding my head just like really awkwardly, right? Just like, yeah, like as if I knew what was going on.
It's like, how do I human? Can you explain to me how to be a person?
Sure, and so that was my experience, right? And so where I first found recovery was behind the bars of Rockingham County Correctional Facility, right? Many times over, and I hear about a lot of people going to these nice treatment centers, and they're going away to all these luxurious places. My detox in recovery was in a jail cell every time, right? And where recovery found me was it wasn't talking to a specialist or any type of psychologist or social worker or anyone like that. It was actually somebody that was, ironically enough, a carpenter, and he came in to the jail and he had exactly what I was looking for, right? Don't get me wrong, social workers are great. I'm a social worker nowadays. They're great. But here was a gentleman that told me that I didn't have to live like that anymore because he had found the way out, right? And why did I believe him? Because he said somebody had shown him the way out and he could show me too, right?
And it was just the fact of, I think as addicts, alcoholics, whatever you want to label yourself as, we're pretty good at reading people, right?
Right.
Like, you know that whole thing, like, you can't lie to a liar, I'm
We
cleaning
made
that
a
up.
whole career off of manipulating.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
like, I can tell when somebody's being genuine, right?
Yeah.
And if somebody is like me, right, understands what I've gone through, has done what I've done, and tells me, like, hey, listen, been exactly where you were, I could show you how to get out of that, I'm going to believe him over a social worker, I'm sorry to say, in the beginning. Like, I remember my first question when I went into treatments or whatever is, okay, are you an alcoholic? Are you an addict?
Right.
And like, if you weren't, I kind of discredited you, even if you went to school for however long it takes to be a social worker.
Sure, that's pretty common, right?
You're just in it for the money. To get things like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and so so my journey started with somebody who just had been through certain steps in his recovery, and it was kind of refreshing, right? Because I had always tried to do this sobriety thing on my own, right? And I'm sure you guys can relate to that. And
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
It's a very heavy load to carry. It's very confusing. You always
Right.
take the wrong corner.
Yeah.
Again, you don't know what to do with your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Right.
right. And I'm wondering, you know, I'm a pretty smart individual. Why is none of my plans following through, right?
What is
didn't-
wrong with everyone else?
Yeah,
How
I
is
didn't
this falling?
understand.
Yeah.
And so here was this gentleman who says, simple, you don't have to come up with your own plan. Just do what I did, right? And when I got out this time in 2011, I simply just walked in his footsteps. I didn't have to blaze my own path, right? I simply just did what he did. And that's what I find a lot of the times is everybody kind of has their own path to recovery, but there's one common theme, one common thread, that they find a mentor who have done it before and kind of start doing what they're doing. Right?
And it's like, I know plenty of people who are self-taught in a lot of different disciplines, you know, self-taught like coders or whatever, if you want to do internet. This is one of those things that really can't be self-taught. You know, I needed to learn it from a multitude of people to show me different ways of thinking about things, different ways of reacting to life for me to get this and be able to give it away too. Like, I know you give it away, you give it away. It's like a common theme amongst us.
Sure, it's one of those great paradoxes, right? We can only keep it if we give it all away.
Yep.
My spirit feels when I'm not of service enough too. I really do. I literally, like, my spirit gets dull, but you can literally see it, like, in my physical appearance. Like, I don't shine as bright. My personality's not as bright, and I just don't look as good. The more that I give away, the better that I physically and emotionally feel.
Sure.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and it used to be crazy how weird it was, but now it's crazy how, like, normal that is in my everyday life, right? I just simply continue to follow certain spiritual practices and principles as if it's just second nature, and of course, as you guys probably have, I have my default, which is to be selfish.
Hold on. You said it. You just assumed that we're defected human beings. Like, Bobby said before the show started he was perfect and his hair was flawless. So.
Well, that part is true. So.
I have cowlicks, don't worry. It's not flawless.
He hides them. Yeah, hides them well. Yeah. So but I'll resort back to my defaults very quickly if I start resting on all of the great accomplishments that I've had, and one of the things I did want to make sure I got to tonight was talking about having that relapse and the recurrence of use and whatever they call it nowadays.
Recurrent symptoms.
Yeah. So what that looked like for me was I simply stopped taking certain steps, stopped practicing a lot of the things that I had done in my 5 years of recovery. And so from 2011 to 2016, I had maintained sobriety. I'm an abstinence person. And I successfully went through and got a graduate degree in social work, and I after 5 DWIs in my life, I had my license back, and all these things started accumulating back in my life, and life got really great again. However, it's not those gifts in life that is what's sustaining my recovery, right? What's sustaining my recovery is certain esteemable acts that I'm taking, right? Using that license to go pick people up and bring them to support systems, right? Making sure that I'm helping as many people as I can, and like we were talking about, giving it away, right? Making sure I'm maintaining that stuff, because those are the real gifts in life.
Exactly.
Sure.
It is crazy. So I have seen a lot of people in my life recently get well. And so at 2 years sober, that is not something that I've seen a lot of until more recently. And it is literally the most amazing feeling, like literally on your heart and your spirit, and like your whole face lights up. You can't even, when you see someone and you saw them when they were like a nervous wreck, and like to even talk, they would shake, and they didn't know who they were, and they had no self-confidence, and you just take a step back and like you just watch them walk with confidence. They know who they are. They have goals. They're achieving them. They're building connections with self, spirit. They're building connections with others, and they're just out there living life. That is one of the most beautiful things that I have seen in recovery, and very recently in my life, I'm witnessing a lot of people get well. I mean, I'm witnessing a lot of people not get well too, but you know, I'm seeing people get well on a large scale, and it's really beautiful to see.
And Snook, you're proof of that, right? So you said you had those from 11 to 16, right? And you're now 2 years? Yeah,
so about 2 years and 2 months abstinent from drugs and alcohol again. Yeah.
So that's like that proof that, like, even if something happens, we could get back to that.
Sure.
You know, you're still Snook. You know what I mean? You got back to that, and I think that's huge to talk about, because a lot of people get extremely discouraged. You know what I mean? And they like to, I know especially for me, right? When before I got sober, I would point out the people that couldn't get sober or that fell off as an excuse for not even trying. You know, it's like, oh, that person's been to 6 rehabs. Why would I even go? You know what I mean? With that idea of, you know, you had some time, you stopped doing certain things, the result happened, and then you got back on the horse and are really doing the deal and really helping, you know, probably way more people than you ever thought you do. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's a huge thing.
Sure. Yeah, and it's really interesting how they say, you know, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, right? For me, it's very, very quickly. When I stop doing what I'm supposed to be doing spiritually, I get sick very quickly, and I don't know that I'm getting sick that quick. Other people can see, but I cannot. And so what that looks like for me is within a month of not doing what I was doing anymore. I'll actually talk really quickly. We have some time. I was bringing in a recovery commitment into that same jail that I had gotten sober back in 2011, and it was actually a 28-day rehab program right on G Block, and I was bringing a commitment in every month for over 3 years, and as soon as I stopped doing that commitment, about 2 months after I stopped doing that, I had a recurrence of use, and 2 months after that, I ended up back in that same jail, but I was not able to leave under my own will, right? I didn't leave with my own clothes, we'll just say.
It just
right?
wasn't a visit?
It wasn't a visit,
It wasn't
no.
just popping in to say hi to the guys?
Extended stay, and so that right there is kind of a really kind of clear picture of what happens to me when I stop doing what I'm doing. And I had 5 years sober with a master's degree in social work, specializing in addiction, mind you, right? And so I don't say that to everybody to brag or to boast. I say that because 5 years sober, and I ended up going back out, and within months of drinking and playing doctor with pills, I was right back to the streets of Lawrence, picking up cocaine and heroin, and right back to intravenous use, right? And so that tells me that self-knowledge avails me absolutely nothing.
Practical application, my friend.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't learn enough. I can't read stuff out of a textbook.
Knowledge is great, though, because it helps us connect with other people.
Sure.
Knowledge is great, but it doesn't keep us sober.
Yeah, without the action.
Yeah, I was about to say knowledge alone, and like I can't think my way out of, or I can't learn my way out of being able to use again. Like if I can have all the knowledge that I possibly can about myself, my disease, you know, what I need to do to not use, right? But if I pick up, I'm not going to be able to be a responsible person on that. Like there's no chance. Like I'm going back to old Bobby, and nobody likes old Bobby. You know, it's just the way it is. There's no control. And I think that's another thing that you just touched on, right? There's no control for us, and that's something that people, I think, need to hear. And from you, it means a lot.
Sure, yeah.
Snook, I want to commend you. Because it takes a lot of courage just to come on a TV show and a podcast in general, but especially after someone who had long-term recovery relapse, and then you're coming out and you're like, here's what happened, you know what I mean? Like, you're not hiding behind that. And I know for me, you know, I had acquired a little bit of time of sobriety, and I relapsed. We relapsed at the same time.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And there was so much guilt and shame. And it was really hard. I actually wanted to die before I wanted to come back. I did, and I tried, and I succeeded. God had other plans for me, though. So I want to talk about that, because, you know, your story is unique for a reason. And it's funny, because I was really resentful before coming to this show today. And I was on the phone for well over an hour working through these resentments. And at the end of it, I realized that although what I'm going through might be painful, but God has given me this for a reason, and it's to help other women. So I want to talk about what it's like to have some time, and what that feels like, and how you came back, because you're still the same old Snook to me, you know?
Yeah, and it's interesting that we bring up this topic, because the stigma is still so great, right? We're working to shatter the stigma, to break it down, so that people just feel free to gain access, and family members can finally start talking about it, right? But it's still very alive and present, and it was very strong with me, especially working in the fields,
Yeah.
right? So people
Yeah.
are looking at these therapists and these social workers and
You've got
psychiatrists.
clean time. So people put you up on a
Right.
pedestal,
Oh,
even though
big
there is no
time.
such thing as pedestals.
There's
and
no
our-
pedestal. What pedestal?
Our egos love it. You know,
Sure.
we'll say we don't, and
Yeah.
don't put me up on a pedestal, but
Right.
everybody loves a little boost.
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know?
and what happens is, of course, if I'm putting myself up on that pedestal, God has a way of kind of like, you know, trying to make me right size, whether it's willingly or not, right?
Yeah.
And so me, I'm very, very stubborn, and so I was taken down a couple of pegs, unfortunately, in a difficult kind of way, and so. I gotta say, like, yes, having the knowledge of being in recovery and like the beautiful life that being sober can bring and living spiritual principles, we know the beauty of that life. But when that gets taken away, there's some kind of knowledge of it, but I don't ever think I'm gonna get back to it, right? There's no way I would ever be able to get back to that kind of happiness and peace. And going back and getting sober again after long-term sobriety felt exponentially harder. I don't know about you.
I'm such a prideful being. I run off pride. I really do.
Weird and
Yeah.
an addict that's
Yeah,
pride
and so to have to
Strange.
humble myself enough to come back and face everyone. First of all, like, no one was judging me, but I was so, you know what, that's not true. People were judging me. There were people that were judging me.
Sure.
But I was so scared to come back, and I was so worried what other people had thought, and I, was working in treatment and doing all these things that, like, I didn't want to own my truth or see my truth, so I sure as shit was not going to bring my truth to you guys.
Yeah.
And that was a really hard obstacle for me to overcome.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a bizarre, it's very, very peculiar how our own ego will work against us, right? Our ego is something that provides defense mechanisms because of all that pride, and we want people to view us in a certain way. However, our ego can be so detrimental to us, especially trying to get sober. It's telling us that, oh, we gotta do this, and you're not doing this right, and all of these defense mechanisms pop up out of nowhere, and we start acting crazy because of them. Right, and it's because of my ego is when I can start really living along non-spiritual lines. So the way I look at it nowadays, and this is very difficult, especially for people living in like higher status, right? To be able to bring that ego down and completely smash that ego is.
You talked about community support groups. Those are huge for that, I believe. Especially, but people in treatment feel weird about, or who work in treatment feel weird about going to certain support groups just because they think clients are going to be there. They shouldn't be. Like, one of the biggest things that I ran into when I just started working in treatment and I was going through some stuff, ego mainly, kind of just getting away from those principles that, helped get me and keep me sober, was I felt like I couldn't talk about the fact that I was struggling because of that pedestal. So you went through that. How do you feel about asking for help now?
Sure. It is. It's interesting because asking for help now, it looks like constantly growing, right? If I look at it as my spiritual life, it's like a tree, right? A tree is an organic being that it's either growing or dying. A tree just never gets to the epitome of what it is and then just kind of lives that way for a while. It either is growing, and as soon as it reaches its epitome of growth, it begins dying, right? And so that's the way I look at the way I live my life nowadays. I'm either growing or dying. And so if I can find new spiritual paths and new teachers, I mean, I've been on all kinds of spiritual kicks. I follow Thich Nhat Hanh, right? I get down on Eckhart Tolle,
I love Eckhart Tolle.
Deepak Chopra, right? I go by all kinds of spiritual.
I love Johann Hari,
oh,
all
man.
of his findings and studies.
I was backstage listening to you guys talking about dislocation theory, and I was like, I know dislocation theory. Bruce Alexander's the man, dude.
I really wanted to come on the show. Just Skype in.
Yeah.
Just Skype in. That's all we need.
Wait, 2 minutes. We just want 2 minutes from you.
I just want you to
come
say
on.
hi and say my name.
Oh, the guy's incredible, right?
Yeah.
And so I'll actually speak to that because my experience looked like this, right? Here was a lot of authoritative figures trying to correct my actions while I was in active drug use, right? And so they didn't know what to do with me. I continued to go in and out of correctional facilities, and here I am already isolated in society. Right? So I'm completely isolated. I'm using drugs by myself. I'm going to get drugs by myself. Life was very lonely.
The only relationship we have is with a substance.
That's it. That was my love.
That's
that was
it.
my romance, right?
Yeah.
And then you take me away from that. You take me away from my solution and then stick me, in a jail cell by myself.
With other dislocated individuals.
Right? And I have no solution. There's no corrective matters happening there. And so when I finally found other people just like me is when the healing started, right? Oh.
Everyone should look into dislocation theory.
Sure.
Everyone should also read Johann Hari's books and findings. Everything, even like his books about depression and connection and the pharmaceutical companies, all of that. I'm just like, preach. I love it.
Like a poster boy of Johann.
I don't know, but my boyfriend hates it. Because he goes to bed like a normal human being, and I just sit up and like binge watch like YouTube.
you put one of those the little headlamps on, and you're reading. Like
He's just like, we're just such different beings, and like he lives such a different life from me. I'm an extremist. It's just like who I know. It's just like who I am.
An extreme extrovert? Like I would have never guessed.
Extreme and like, what was the other thing? Like ego or something?
True,
right?
that is true. You know what? I was having a conversation though before I came here, working through my resentment, how God sometimes utilizes ego to help other people though.
Sure.
Yeah.
He doesn't remove all defects of character.
No.
He still uses some of them.
They have their place.
I'm loud, I'm obnoxious. I feel like he's using that.
Yeah, and you know what? You're for some people and you're not for some, and that's cool. And like the people that you are for, the universe will guide them to you.
Cool.
That's why I'm here.
So the show's over. It goes quick, doesn't it?
It really does go quick. Yeah.
We didn't even get to. We don't have time. Well, we have to come back. Snook has to come back.
Sure.
Part 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll schedule something right after the show. Yeah.
All right. Can we get weirder though?
Yeah.
We should
all the clothes
dress
stays on though.
As
I
long
was gonna say we should all dress accordingly.
Stop. It just sucks.
Okay. All right. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you for tuning in. If you're struggling, if a loved one's struggling, if anyone's struggling, or you just want to learn more, reach out. Look us up on YouTube, Facebook. Reach out to Snook. We're all here for you if you need anything. Thank you.